They thought they could manipulate me, guilt me into funding their lavish vacation under the guise of family support. I smiled, kept my mouth shut, and then I acted. I'm 25 now, and until recently, I felt like I was doing pretty well for myself. I have a good job in tech, a small but comfortable apartment that's all mine, and I manage my life without relying on anyone else. But somehow, my parents have this way of pulling me back into their orbit, and this time, it was all tied to my older brother, Mike. Let me paint a picture. Mike is 27 and still lives at home, perpetually finding himself since he turned 17. High school? He barely scraped by. College? He bounced between 3. The first one kicked him out for failing everything but gym class. The second dismissed him because of disciplinary issues. He claimed the professors didn't appreciate his unique approach to deadlines, but we all know that's code for partying too hard and skipping class. I honestly can't even recall the reason he gave for leaving the third. As for jobs? Those are a joke. Mike's employment history is like a revolving door. He worked at an electronics store for a bit, but got caught giving his friends discounts. Then he tried being a barista, but quit because the customers were too demanding. Most recently, he lasted 2 weeks at a gym before deciding that early mornings were toxic to his lifestyle. Meanwhile, I worked tirelessly through college, balancing part-time jobs and scholarships to graduate without debt. I have a stable job, pay my own bills, and have even started building up my savings. But apparently, in my family, being responsible doesn't earn you praise. It means you're the one they turn to when they need something. So, last year, my parents invited me over for Sunday dinner, nothing unusual. My mom makes incredible lasagna, and my dad likes to grill me about my future plans while sipping iced tea. That's their routine. But this time I sensed something was different. Halfway through dinner, Mom dropped a bombshell. Honey, we've been thinking. Wouldn't it be nice if you moved back home for a while? I nearly choked on my garlic bread. What? Why would I do that? Well, she said in her most soothing voice, it just makes sense. Housing costs are outrageous and rent is just throwing money away. If you moved back, you could save so much for the future. Dad nodded, acting like he was part of some brilliant master plan. Exactly. You're young. This is the time to be smart with your money. Plus, you'd be helping the family. There it was, the guilt trip. My parents are experts at this. They've been using the family helps family card for as long as I can remember. When Mike wrecked Dad's car as a teenager, family helps family. When Mike needed money for books, which I later discovered went towards some video game console, family helps family. Still, they made it sound so reasonable. It would only be for a little while, Mom added. And it's not like you wouldn't be contributing. Just a small amount for rent and groceries, far less than you're paying for your apartment. I didn't agree immediately. Okay, here's the I did like my apartment, I really did. It was a cramped little box, yeah, but it was my cramped little box. No one breathing down my neck about leaving a spoon in the sink, no navigating the minefield of family squabbles, and most importantly, no Mike perpetually glued to the couch in his stained pajama bottoms at 2 in the afternoon. Still, I had to admit, reluctantly, that they had a point. My rent was a monster, gobbling up a terrifying chunk of my income each month. Moving back home, even temporarily, offered the possibility, however slim, of actually building up my savings. Just think about it, honey, Mom had said, deploying that sweet, hopeful smile that always felt like a carefully baited hook. No pressure. So, I spent what felt like an eternity turning the idea over and over in my mind. Logically, it made sense. I could stash away some cash, maybe even start dreaming about a down payment on a place of my own someday. And honestly, a tiny piece of me was also hoping that it would be a chance to reconnect with my family. Ever since I moved out, we drifted apart, and maybe this could bridge the distance. After a week of internal debates that felt like a tennis match with no winner, I finally caved and called Mom. Okay, I said, trying not to sound too defeated. I'll do it. Her reaction was a little over the top now that I think about it. Oh, honey, you won't regret this. It'll be wonderful to have you home again. That should have been my first clue, that little alarm bell ringing in the back of my head. She sounded way too thrilled about what was supposedly me doing them a favor. But in the moment, I brushed it off. I told myself they were just happy to have me around again. The following weekend, I packed up my life and moved back into my old room. It was a bizarre time capsule, practically untouched since high school, the same twin bed, the same faded posters plastered on the wall. It felt surreal, but I kept repeating to myself that it was temporary, just a stepping stone. For the first few weeks, things seemed manageable. I paid a small contribution towards rent, a fraction of what I'd been shelling out for my apartment, and chipped in with groceries. It wasn't ideal, far from it, but it wasn't a complete disaster either. I even started to convince myself that I'd made the right call. Mom would constantly tell me how wonderful it was to have me back, and Dad kept trotting out the same lines about family sticking together. Even Mike was surprisingly agreeable, cracking jokes, some of them even funny, and actually making an effort to clean up after himself once or twice. But looking back, I should have known better. My parents are masters of creating the illusion of calm while secretly orchestrating everything behind the scenes. And Mike, well, Mike's just Mike. He's been coasting on the family's generosity for years, and I should have recognized that my return was just another convenient pit stop on his free ride. But I was optimistic, maybe even a little naive. I genuinely thought this could work, that I could help my family while simultaneously helping myself. Of course, it didn't take long for the cracks to start showing. It began subtly with small, almost imperceptible shifts in the dynamic. Take, for example, Mike's room. Suddenly, it underwent a major, unexplained transformation. I walked past his door one afternoon and saw him struggling to mount a massive flat-screen TV on the wall. His desk now boasted a brand-new gaming PC, complete with one of those ridiculously oversized chairs that light up like a Christmas tree. I couldn't help myself. "Where did you get all that?" I asked, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. He just shrugged, not even bothering to look up. "I've been saving," he mumbled. "Saving? From what?" I wanted to snap, but I bit my tongue. Maybe he actually had saved up. Stranger things have happened. But then there was the fridge situation. Every time I went grocery shopping, it was as if the food vanished into thin air within 48 hours. I'd stock up on essentials, eggs, milk, bread, some fruit, a few snacks. And the next day, I'd find Mike casually devouring a sandwich the size of a small dog, constructed with half a loaf of bread and approximately a pound of cheese. "Did you eat the last of the eggs?" I asked him one morning, trying to remain calm. "Yeah," he said, scrolling mindlessly on his phone. "I made an omelet. You want me to pick up more or something?" I just stood there, completely speechless. He hadn't bought groceries himself in ages, and now he was acting like my bringing it up was some major imposition. I mentioned it to Mom later, and she just chuckled. "Oh, that's just Mike. He's not thinking about those things. I'll nudge him." Then came the avalanche of deliveries. It felt like every other day Mike was getting a package, shoes, clothes, some random gadget or another, things he definitely didn't need. One day, the delivery guy struggled to bring in this huge box that turned out to be a brand new, top-of-the-line sound system. He was practically bouncing with excitement setting it up. "Where's all this money even coming from?" I asked, trying to keep the annoyance out of my voice. "Oh, you know, here and there," he mumbled vaguely. Here and there apparently meant my bank account, because the next time I went to do the grocery shopping, Mom handed me her card and said, "Use this for the family groceries, and if there's any money left over, just cover whatever else we need. We'll pay you back later." I didn't give it a second thought at first. I just assumed it was one of those "we'll settle up eventually" situations, but eventually never arrived. By the time I realized she wasn't actually keeping track, I'd already spent hundreds of dollars on groceries. And then there was the whole rent thing. When I first moved back in, we agreed on a small, fixed amount I'd contribute each month. But maybe 2 months in, Mom said, "Honey, I hate to ask, but could you maybe help out a little more this month? Things are a little tight right now." "Sure," I said, thinking it was just a one-time thing. Except it wasn't. That little extra became the new normal, and suddenly I was paying almost as much as I had been for my own apartment. When I brought it up, Dad said, "It's just temporary, sweetie. You're in a better position to help us out than we are right now, and it's really good for the family." That phrase, "good for the family," was starting to grate on my nerves. It wasn't just the money, though. It was the overall atmosphere. I began to notice how everything revolved around Mike. If he wanted something, my parents would bend over backwards to get it for him. If he needed to borrow the car, no problem. If he wanted to have friends over for a movie night, Mom would make snacks and tell me to try to be understanding about the noise. Meanwhile, if I left a single dish in the sink, I'd get a passive-aggressive comment about how we all needed to pull our weight. One time, I overheard Mom on the phone with her sister bragging about how Mike was finally getting his life together. She went on and on about his plans to start a business, some half-baked idea about designing custom sneakers or something. "Lucas is helping us keep things afloat," she said, as if my contributions were just some minor footnote in the grand tale of Mike's life. That was it. I went upstairs, shut my bedroom door, and sat on my bed, absolutely seething. How had I let things get to this point? I was working my tail off at my job, footing all the bills, and dealing with this ridiculousness while Mike just coasted through life like it was one long vacation. I started mentally replaying everything: Mike's new sound system, the constantly disappearing groceries, the endless parade of deliveries, the rent that kept creeping up. It all began to make sense. This wasn't about helping the family. This was about me funding their lifestyle, with Mike as the star of the show and me as the stagehand keeping the lights on in the background. The next day, I tried to have a serious conversation with my parents. I sat them down and said, "Look, I feel like I'm contributing significantly more than what we originally discussed. Can we please go back to what we agreed on in the beginning?" Mom gave me her usual saccharine smile. "Oh, honey, we're so incredibly grateful for everything you're doing. It's just that things are a little difficult right now. You know how it is." Dad chimed in, "It's not going to be like this forever. Just until we get back on our feet." They always had an excuse ready. Always. And every single time, they managed to make it seem like I was the one being unreasonable for even bringing it up. After that conversation, I started paying a lot closer attention to how things were being managed. I started noticing how often Mom and Dad would whisper to each other when they thought I couldn't hear them. I saw how Mike seemed to have an endless string of new projects that conveniently required my parents' financial assistance. I understood something profound that night. This wasn't a temporary situation. They weren't striving for self-sufficiency. They were content to rely on me indefinitely for as long as I allowed it. But I wouldn't allow it any longer. My breaking point arrived on a Friday evening. After a long, draining week at the office, I was anticipating a relaxing night at home. My plan was simple: order takeout, watch some mindless TV, and recharge my batteries. But, of course, with my family, nothing ever goes according to plan. I walked through the front door and was immediately confronted with chaos. The living room looked like the aftermath of a wild party. Empty soda cans and crumpled chip bags were strewn everywhere, and Max, Mike's ridiculously energetic dog, was barking incessantly at something outside. Mike was sprawled on the couch, feet propped up on the coffee table, completely engrossed in his video game. "Hey," I said, setting my purse down near the door. "Could you please clean this up? It's a pigsty in here." He barely acknowledged me. "Yeah, I'll get to it later," he mumbled, his eyes still glued to the screen. "Not later," I said, my voice louder this time. "Now. I've been working all day and I don't want to come home to this mess." "Oh, relax," he said, pausing his game. "It's just a few cans. Why are you always so stressed?" That was it. My patience shattered. "Stressed, Mike? It's not just about the cans. It's every single day. I'm working my tail off while you sit around doing absolutely nothing, and you can't even manage to clean up after yourself." "What's your problem?" he retorted, standing up. "She moved back in, not me. No one asked you to play housemaid." We were shouting now, and Max, clearly distressed by the volume, began barking even more loudly. "Are you serious right now?" I yelled. "I'm paying the rent, buying the groceries, covering the bills, and you think I'm just acting like a maid? You've been sponging off Mom and Dad for years, and now you're trying to make me out to be the problem." Mike rolled his eyes and waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, here we go again. Per me, so responsible. You're not a saint, you know. If you don't like it, leave. No one's forcing you to stay." That stung more than I anticipated. "You know what?" I said, shaking my head. "You're right. I don't have to stay. And I'm done." He looked taken aback for a moment, but quickly replaced it with a smirk. "Good. Don't let the door hit you on the way out." I stormed upstairs, slamming my bedroom door behind me. I wasn't going to back down this time. I grabbed my duffel bag and began to pack. I didn't care that it was late or inconvenient. I was finished. As I threw clothes and essentials into my bag, I replayed the argument over and over in my head. How had I allowed things to reach this point? Why had I stayed as long as I did? The answers no longer mattered. All I knew was that I wouldn't spend another night under that roof. I hauled my duffel bag down the stairs, ready to get out. But just as my foot hit the last step, the front door swung open. Mom and Dad were back from dinner. "Oh, Sarah, what are you doing?" Mom asked, her usual cheerful tone laced with confusion as she spotted my bag. "I'm leaving," I stated simply. "What?" she asked, stepping closer, a crease forming between her brows. "Why? What's going on?" Before I could answer, Mark sauntered into the room, that familiar smirk plastered on his face. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Mom's expression crumpled slightly. "Mark, what did you do?" she asked, her voice laced with a hint of desperation. "Nothing," he said, his tone instantly defensive. "We just had a stupid disagreement, and now she's making a huge deal out of it." I couldn't help the bitter chuckle that escaped my lips. "A stupid disagreement? You told me I wasn't wanted here and that I should just leave if I wasn't happy. Well, here I am taking your advice." Mom turned to Mark, her voice softening to that low, serious tone she uses when she's trying to diffuse a situation. "Mark, you need to apologize to your sister for making her feel unwelcome," she said with surprising firmness. "We need Sarah here. She's been a huge help around the house, and it's not right to push her away like this." Dad, who'd been silent until now, chimed in. She's right, Mark. If Sarah leaves, it's going to make things much harder for all of us. You need to fix this. Mark groaned dramatically. Fine, I'll apologize. Whatever you want. I stood there, a wave of nausea washing over me. It hit me then with sickening clarity. They weren't asking him to apologize because they actually cared about me, about how I felt. They were asking because they needed me to stay so they could continue to rely on me, exploit me. All those months of thinking I was contributing to the family, of hoping that maybe we were finally starting to connect on a deeper level, and it all boiled down to this. I was just a convenient resource, a live-in maid they didn't have to pay. Don't bother, I said, hoisting my bag onto my shoulder, the weight of it feeling different now, heavier somehow. I'm not staying, and no insincere apology is going to change my mind. Sarah, please wait, Mom said, stepping directly in front of me, blocking my path to the door. We can work this out. Let's just sit down and talk it through calmly. No, I said firmly, meeting her gaze. I'm done. I've had enough of this. Mom's face fell, and for a fleeting second I thought I saw genuine sadness in her eyes, but then her expression hardened and she straightened her shoulders. You're being totally unreasonable, Sarah. We're a family. Exactly, I retorted, the word feeling hollow in my mouth. Families support each other, help each other grow, but that's not what's happening here. This has been a 1A street for far too long, and I'm done playing along with this charade. I pushed past her, my heart pounding in my chest, and reached for the doorknob. As I stepped outside into the cool evening air, I heard Mark mutter from behind me, whatever. She'll be back. She always comes crawling back. I didn't even spare him a glance, let alone a response. I just walked to my car, tossed my duffel bag into the back seat, and drove away, leaving the stifling atmosphere and unspoken expectations behind. That night, I crashed at my friend Jake's place. He didn't pry, didn't ask a million questions. He just handed me a blanket and a pillow and said, stay as long as you need, Sarah. My couch is your couch. Lying on his surprisingly comfortable couch, I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe even years. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I wasn't carrying the crushing weight of my family's demands on my shoulders. I knew they'd blow up my phone the next day, and they did, predictably, but I found that I simply didn't care. A couple of months after I moved out of my family's house and away from their constant guilt, I was finally starting to feel normal again. Living at Jake's had been a lifesaver, and I'd eventually found my own small apartment, a cozy spot that didn't come with all the strings attached to living under my parents' roof. I was slowly settling into a routine, and for the first time in a long time, life felt peaceful, almost quiet. Then one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Mom. I almost didn't pick up because, honestly, I wasn't in the mood for one of her carefully crafted guilt trips, but she let it ring and left a voicemail. I hesitated for a moment, then with a deep breath I opened it later that night. Hi, Sarah. It's Mom. I just wanted to talk. The message started with love you, but it felt so artificial, like a cheap imitation, that it sent a shiver down my spine. Still, curiosity, or maybe a sliver of hope, made me dial her number. It rang only once before she picked up, her voice coated in a sugary sweetness I hadn't heard in ages. Sarah, darling. I'm so glad you called. How are you holding up? Fine, I replied, my voice wary. What's this about? She hesitated, drawing out the silence before finally saying, well, your father and I have been discussing things, and we've come to realize that we weren't exactly fair to you when you were living under our roof. It's been weighing heavily on us. I responded, skepticism dripping from the word. I wasn't buying this sudden change of heart. So, she continued, her voice rising in enthusiasm, we were hoping we could do something special as a family, a way to reconnect and mend fences. How would you feel about a luxurious family vacation? Under normal circumstances, the offer of a vacation would have been irresistible. Who doesn't dream of escaping to paradise? But this was my family, and I knew better than to trust promises that sounded too good to be true. Still, I decided to play along, just to see where this was going. I don't know, I said, feigning indifference. What kind of vacation are we talking about? A tropical escape, she exclaimed, practically bubbling with excitement. Picture it, pristine beaches, gourmet food, pure relaxation. It'll be divine. We were thinking of a resort in the Bahamas. What do you say? I paused, weighing the temptation against my inherent distrust. A vacation like that sounded heavenly, and frankly, I desperately needed a break. But this was my mother, a master manipulator, and I knew their track record for honesty wasn't exactly stellar. Okay, I said cautiously, let me think about it. Oh, wonderful, she gushed, failing to conceal her eagerness. Take all the time you need, but let us know soon so we can start planning the details. There was no way this was as innocent as it sounded. My family didn't just want to reconnect. They were after something, and considering our history, I had a pretty good idea of what it was. Nevertheless, I decided to visit them to hear the full pitch. If nothing else, it might provide some amusement. A few days later, I found myself pulling up to their house. Everything seemed unnervingly normal, almost staged. Mom greeted me at the door with her usual exaggerated enthusiasm, like I was some long-lost relative. Dad was comfortably settled in his recliner, radiating a false sense of contentment, and Mark was conspicuously absent. It felt like they were deliberately setting the scene for the perfect family reunion. We settled into the living room and Mom launched into her sales pitch. She waxed lyrical about how much she missed me, how family was the most important thing in the world, and how this trip could represent a fresh start for all of us. She even threw in a few guilt-tripping lines like, "We only have each other, Sarah, and we want to make things right." Dad chimed in with his usual pragmatic perspective. "It's a wonderful opportunity for us to spend some quality time together. And Sarah, you've been working tirelessly, you deserve a vacation." I remained silent, offering the occasional nod, letting them perform their act. But as the conversation progressed, it became increasingly obvious that they were overdoing it, laying it on too thick. Eventually, I interrupted, "Okay, so what exactly am I supposed to do?" Mom beamed, her eyes sparkling with artificial warmth. "We were thinking it would be easiest if you handled the booking arrangements. We can give you all the details, dates, preferences, everything, and you can take care of the reservation. And of course we will pay you back in a few days." "In a few days?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow in suspicion. "Of course. We thought it would be much easier if only one person arranged everything." Just then, I heard the sound of the garage door opening. Mark had arrived. That was my cue to leave. As I turned to leave, their voices drifted from the kitchen. My mother's tone, a little too sweet, a little too calculated, cut through the air. "Once Lucas agrees to book everything," she was saying, "we'll promise to pay him back, but of course we won't." My Uncle Mike's laugh followed, a grating sound I'd grown to resent. "He owes us anyway for everything." Then my father's voice adding its weight to the conversation, "and he'll forgive us like he always does. He can afford it." I froze. The hurt wasn't a surprise, but it still stung. This wasn't about a family vacation, a chance to reconnect. It was another calculated move, another way to take advantage of me, just like always. My stomach churned. I quietly slipped out without a word, the taste of betrayal bitter on my tongue. As I walked away, a plan started to form in my mind. If they wanted me to book a trip, then I'd give them a trip. A completely unexpected one. The tables were about to turn. I began piecing together the details as I drove home. I'd play along, acting like I was falling for their lies, then flip the script. They were about to learn that underestimating me would be a mistake. Once I got home, I called Mom and kept my voice light. "Everything's fine. I'll book it. Send me everyone's details and preferences, I'll take care of it." "Oh, Lucas, thank you," she gushed, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "We knew you'd come around. This is going to be amazing." Okay, here's the truth. When I agreed, my family thought they'd won. But I wasn't going to let that happen, not this time. If they wanted to trick me, I would turn the tables and deliver a trick they would never forget. The first step was to appear calm and normal. I couldn't let them suspect that I was aware of their deception. So, when Mom started flooding my inbox with texts about dates, preferences, and room types, I acted like a dutiful son. "Sure, Mom. Sounds great. I'll handle it." She even called a few times, fishing to make sure I was still okay with paying up front, but I stayed steady. "Yeah, no problem at all. I've got it covered." She probably pictured me as the perfect sucker. Once I had all the specifics, the dates, the desired flight times, their ridiculous room requests, I got to work. Instead of booking a trip for 4, as they so confidently expected, I booked a trip for 1, me. I found an all-inclusive, 5-star resort in the Bahamas, complete with a private villa, breathtaking ocean views, and 24-hour room service. All the works. Then I put my tech skills to use to create some incredibly convincing fake reservations. I created elaborate itineraries for their hotel stays, making sure everything looked legitimate. I even added little touches, complimentary breakfast, very important person, check-in, to make it seem extra special. But here's where it gets even better. I booked their flights through a travel agency that I knew only allowed the primary account holder, me, to make changes. That way, if they ever figured out the ruse, I could cancel the flights with a single click. And, of course, I ensured that the tickets they would receive had an incorrect departure time printed on them. Now, I'm fully aware of what you're thinking. "Lucas, this is an awful lot of effort just to mess with your family." And you'd be right. It was a lot of effort, but after everything they had put me through, I figured they deserved it. More importantly, the satisfaction of finally standing up for myself? Absolutely worth it. The day of the trip came and I ensured that I kept up the charade. I called Mom that morning to confirm all the details. Your flight leaves at 11 a.m. sharp, I said, making my voice sound helpful. Don't forget to arrive early for security and make sure to bring the printouts I sent you. Some airlines are weird about digital tickets. Oh, thank you, Lucas, she said, her voice practically dripping with gratitude. We're so excited. This is going to be the best trip ever. I could almost hear her smirking through the phone. Meanwhile, I was already packed and ready to go, heading to my own luxury vacation. My flight, thankfully booked with a different airline, was scheduled to depart hours before theirs, so I made sure to get to the airport with plenty of time to spare. Inside, I kept my phone on just long enough to see Mom's text, "We're on our way." I replied quickly, a terse "safe travels. Can't wait to see you at the resort," before switching to airplane mode and settling in for my own flight. The resort exceeded all my expectations. The moment I reached my room, I snapped a photo of the stunning view from the balcony and sent it to them, captioning it, "Made it. Hope you're having a smooth trip." The delicious anticipation of knowing they were completely unaware of what awaited them was almost as intoxicating as the view itself. Almost. I knew the realization wouldn't dawn on them until they arrived at the airport, tickets in hand. Their cleverly doctored tickets displayed the wrong departure time, a full 2 hours later than the actual flight. By the time they reached the gate, the plane would be airborne, a distant memory. I could picture them, Mom, inevitably, frantically waving the fake tickets, demanding answers, Dad, likely sputtering about some conspiracy, and Mike, standing a bit apart, face glued to his phone, blissfully indifferent to the unfolding drama. But the best part, the absolute piece de resistance, was the inevitable phone call. The moment they grasped the reality of the situation, they would call me. And I would be ready. Sure enough, about an hour after their supposed departure time, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I let it ring. Then Dad's call came. Ignored that one, too. Finally, a text from Mike, "Dude, WTF? The flight's gone." I allowed a few minutes to pass, savoring the moment before replying. "What do you mean? I'm at the resort. Didn't you get on the flight?" The response was immediate. "Our tickets don't work. They said the flight already left." A slow smile spread across my face as I typed back, "That's so weird. Everything was fine with my flight. Let me check on it when I get to Wi-Fi." Before switching back to airplane mode, I sent one last message to our group chat, a picture of myself lounging by the pool, sunglasses perched on my nose, a vibrant cocktail in hand. "Enjoy your vacation." "Oh, wait. Guess it's just me this time. Cheers." And then, blissful silence. The following days were absolute paradise. I swam, savored incredible food, and basked in the sun's warmth without a single guilt trip or subtle dig to ruin the mood. The knowledge that they were stuck at home, scrambling to understand what went wrong, only amplified my enjoyment. Today is my last day here. I feel utterly rejuvenated, but I also know that the real entertainment awaits me back home. I'll fill you in as soon as I've landed and assessed the situation. Okay, so let me paint you a picture of the homecoming scene. I knew there would be fallout, but even I underestimated the sheer magnitude of my family's reaction. If you thought they were experts at emotional manipulation before, you haven't seen anything yet. I flew home after the most gloriously liberating week of my life. The resort was perfect, and for once, I felt like I had truly treated myself the way I deserved. But the moment I stepped off the elevator and turned towards my apartment, I saw them. There they were. My parents and Mike were camped out right outside my door, looking as if they were preparing to stage some kind of intervention. Mom was glaring, her face a mask of barely suppressed fury. Dad was red-faced and pacing, practically radiating anger. And Mike? Well, he just looked profoundly bored, probably because he had to tear himself away from his PlayStation for this little charade. As soon as I stepped into view, Mom launched her attack. "How could you do this, Lucas?" Her voice, laced with hysteria, pierced the air as they confronted me at my doorstep. "We looked like complete fools at the airport. Those tickets you gave us were useless." Then my father jumped in, accusing and pointing right at me. "You embarrassed us in front of everyone. The airline staff said those tickets weren't even real. Do you have any idea how that made us look?" I simply unlocked my door and said, "Oh, I know exactly how that made you look." I stepped inside, leaving the door wide open. I knew they weren't going anywhere until they'd spewed their anger. Mike trailed in last, muttering, "This is so dumb." For once, I actually agreed with him. "Sit down," I said, gesturing towards the couch. Predictably, they remained standing. My mother, arms crossed, planted herself in the middle of the living room, her face a mask of anger and wounded disappointment. "Why would you do this, Lucas?" she asked, adopting that familiar tone of parental sorrow. "We just wanted to spend time with you." As a family. I couldn't help but laugh, a harsh, bitter sound. Family? Really? Are we talking about the same family that conspired to use me as a walking ATM to pay for this entire trip? The same family that conveniently forgot they were supposed to pay me back? I overheard you in the kitchen, remember? So spare me the act of pretending this was about some heartwarming family reunion. Their faces drained of color and a heavy silence hung in the air. My father, always quick to defend himself, finally spoke. It was just a misunderstanding. We didn't mean it like that. Oh, really? I replied, pulling out my phone. A few taps and then I hit play. The recording I'd secretly made of their scheming kitchen conversation filled the room. I paused it abruptly and slid my phone back into my pocket. Still a misunderstanding? I asked, locking eyes with my father. My mother opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again, gasping for a response. Finally, she managed. That was taken out of context. This time, my laughter was even louder, laced with disbelief. Out of context? You literally said you weren't going to pay me back. How much clearer does it need to be? Mike, who had been uncharacteristically silent up to this point, finally chimed in. Okay, fine. Maybe we were going to let you cover it, but it's not like you can't afford it, Lucas. You're doing fine. I turned to him, a surge of anger coursing through me. Oh, so now it's my responsibility to fund your vacations? Or does that only apply when mom and dad run out of money to bail you out of whatever mess you've managed to create this time? Don't talk to your brother like that, my mother snapped, instantly rushing to his defense. Working hard. I interrupted, my voice rising in disbelief. At what exactly? He hasn't held down a real job in years, but somehow he's always got the latest gadgets and lavish trips planned. Meanwhile, I'm the one working my fingers to the bone and you expect me to just hand over my money like it's nothing? Well, not anymore. My father attempted to intervene, his tone attempting to be calm but still dripping with condescension. Oh, Lucas, we're family. You shouldn't be airing our dirty laundry like this. That was the last straw. You want to talk about family? I asked, my voice steady but laced with anger. Family doesn't manipulate each other. Family doesn't treat one kid like an ATM while allowing the other to coast through life without any consequences. You don't get to play the family card now just because you're upset that I didn't let you take advantage of me this time. They didn't have much to say after that. My mother attempted one last guilt trip, saying, You've changed, Lucas. You're not the same person you used to be. Yeah, I have changed, I replied, my voice firm. I finally learned how to stand up for myself, and you're mad because you can't control me anymore. With that, I opened the door and gestured for them to leave. We're not done talking about this, my father said as he reluctantly walked out. I think we are, I said, closing the door on their retreating figures. The next day unfolded into a chaotic mess. My phone buzzed incessantly, notifications flooding the screen with messages from relatives and friends we shared. Each one echoed the same sentiment: how could you treat your mother and father this way, and you're being unbelievably selfish. It was clear mom and dad had wasted no time in spinning their version of events. In their telling, I tricked them with phony tickets as some sort of cruel joke, conveniently omitting their initial plan to take advantage of me. Now the idea of getting back at them began to form in my mind. I had something brewing. I'd provide an update when the moment was right. Okay, Reddit, here's the update. Following the mess my family had unleashed, I decided it was time to expose everything. No more secrets, no more playing along. If my parents intended to broadcast their skewed narrative to anyone who'd lend an ear, I felt entitled to share my side of the story. I needed to correct the record. So, I did the only thing that seemed logical in this digital age. I turned to Facebook. I crafted a lengthy, detailed post explaining the entire situation. I began by describing how my parents convinced me to move back home, promising to help the family, only to gradually place all their financial burdens on my shoulders. I outlined how they had been using me to subsidize my brother's lifestyle while simultaneously making me feel inadequate. I held nothing back. I detailed the conversation I'd overheard, the one where they plotted to manipulate me into covering the vacation costs and admitted they never intended to repay me. Naturally, I included the detail everyone was clamoring to know: my revenge. But here's where I really hammered the point home. I attached the recording, the one in which my parents and brother mapped out their entire scheme, complete with their mocking laughter. I prefaced the post with a clear disclaimer: this isn't intended to humiliate anyone. I'm sharing this because my parents have been actively spreading their version of the story, and I believe it's only fair that my friends and family hear the truth. You can decide for yourself whose. The final straw came when my parents reappeared at my apartment. This time, I didn't grant them entry, but I stood in the doorway as Mom pleaded with me to undo the damage. You've ruined our reputation, she cried, tears streaming down her face. How could you do this to us? We're your parents. I responded, you ruined your own reputation. All I did was reveal the truth. If that embarrasses you, perhaps you should examine your actions instead of placing the blame on me. With that, I closed the door. Later that day, I published a final post on Facebook. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who reached out with kind words and support. To those who believe I went too far, I respect your opinion, but I stand firm in my decision to share the truth. To my family, I'm finished. I've tried to assist you. I've attempted to establish boundaries, and I've tried to be the bigger person. None of it has been effective because you lack respect for me and my contributions. From this point forward, I'm prioritizing my own well-being. Please refrain from calling, texting, or showing up at my apartment. I'm moving forward with my life, and that doesn't include you. Shortly after they saw the post, I blocked their numbers, unfriended them on Facebook, and set my profile to private. Life is quieter now, and I've been actively nurturing relationships with people who genuinely respect and care for me. Severing ties wasn't merely the best choice for me, it was the only viable option. Sometimes walking away is the most loving act you can perform for yourself. Thank you for staying with me through this unbelievable journey. I'm finally free, and the feeling is liberating.